Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to part 1 season 1 of What If Deku Was in Class 1B. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat, so we begin. The last days seemed to drag on forever as the summer holidays finally passed and Izuku was running past the UA gates with his mind abuzz. This place is too big, he muttered, running down the long halls before spotting the sign he needed. There is it, 1B, since classes 1 and 1B are randomly sorted. Izuku found himself in the latter. He hoped with all his might that Bakugo and the scary blue-head boy from the entrance exam weren't in his class as he took a deep breath. This is my first step to being a hero, he thought to himself before sliding the ridiculously tall door open and was met with most of the class turning to stare at him. Oh, I'm Midoriya. He wanted to mentally face-palm himself for stuttering as Izuku looked around and internally let out a sigh of relief when he didn't recognize a single familiar face. Yo, you're the dude that punched the zero-pointer. Turning to face the boy with spiky black hair pushed upward with a blue and white checkered bandana. Izuku's first impression of the guy in front of him was that he was cool. Me. Izuku pointed at himself. And the boy nodded. Yeah, I was getting a two-pointer when I saw you break your body on that thing. Oh, the name's Yosuo Ways. Izuku relaxed as other students also got up and casual introductions flew around as the tall door behind Izuku opened again. Hey, kids, seats now. Izuku ran to the assigned seat as he looked at the man who had just walked in briskly. He had spiky gray hair, a bulky body build, two prominent canine teeth pointing out of his lower lip, and an X-shaped scar on the side of his face underneath his eye. Okay, kids. I'm your homeroom teacher, Vlad King. Just call me Vlad. He beamed at his students in a toothy smile as he checked his phone. Again, he mumbled before shrugging his bulky shoulders and turned to his class. Okay. So we now have about 20 minutes until orientation. I need to see the principal. So you kids do a quick introduction while I'm gone. His voice was a little rough, but he seemed like a friendly person who was easy to get along with, so the class relaxed. Vlad then left the room saying something about Aizawa doing this every year as the students tried to decide who should start the introduction. Wace, the guy who recognized Izuku earlier, was the first to get up and casually leaned against his assigned desk. Sup, I'm Yosuo Wace and I like smartphone games. He looked a little lost as he wondered what to say next. Quirk, it was the guy who sat in front of Izuku who spoke up. And Wace nodded. Right, my quirk is called Weld. I can fuse objects at the atomic level if I'm touching both things. The simple explanation was right to the point. And Wace looked proud of himself. Ibara Shizaki. She hadn't even waited for Wace to sit down as the class turned to face a pretty girl with vines for hair. She stood there, almost imposingly as she didn't make any eye contact. My sacred gift from God is vines. You mean your quirk? A girl, also with green hair and very pretty, spoke up with a toothy grin to show off her sharp teeth. Shizaki only looked at her with a cold glare before turning away again. As you sinners can see, I have vines for hair. When I am blessed in the rain and light from heaven, I can manipulate my hair as I please. She sat down, completely ignoring the other girl who just shrugged it off as an average-looking guy with brown hair and large eyes stood up. Kosei Tsuburaba. Quirk, solid air. I can solidify the air I breathe out. Yeah. I got nothing else. Next, he seemed to get distracted easily as his eyes looked around the room before an awkward smile plastered itself on his face. However, the tension didn't grow as the next guy put down the weights he had and immediately stood up with a slightly arrogant grin. Tetsu. He smiled as he took a fighting stance, fists clenched and knees bent as if he was ready to knock someone out. My quirk is steel, and I like fighting. It's pretty manly. I can turn my skin into steel, and my iron intake fuels me. I'll lose durability if I don't eat enough. It gives me immunity to freezing and resistance to heat. He boasted with a proud look on his face at his explanation when he sat down for the next person, grabbing his weight again as they turned to her. Izuku noted that the girl who tried talking to Shizaki earlier as the girl with green hair stood confidently again. Her stance was provocative as she addressed the class. Hello, everyone. I'm Satsuna Takage. Takage filled her happy smile with confidence, and she was quite talkative as she started to talk about her quirk. Well, in all honesty, my quirk isn't exactly strong, but that doesn't make me weak. Her arm then entirely separated from the shoulder, and she made the floating appendage give a joyous wave to everyone. It's called Lizard Tail Splitter, and I can split my body into a max of 50 different pieces. The arm then broke into 3 pieces as they flew around and spun around Takage. As you can see, I can control them. I can also regenerate, but that's exhausting and I have a time limit. I just have to reconnect my body to my main part to reset that though. Her confidence wasn't arrogant. And her words were warm as she returned her arm to her body. They reconnected like magnets as she clenched a fist, making sure she could feel everything before a pondering look adorned her features. As for likes, I like dinosaurs. After an introduction like that, Izuku nervously gulped when he saw that it was his turn soon as the guy in front of him stood up. He had a slightly pompous look on his face, his attitude similar to Shizaki with the way he looked almost condescendingly down at everyone. But after a second, he lowered his chin with a polite nod. "Nido Monoma," he said. "My quirk is copy." He then casually glanced over his shoulder at Izuku, who had been rapidly scribbling in his notebook this whole time. "I'm saying this once, so don't forget." When Izuku nodded, he gave his explanation. "I can copy someone's quirk after I touch them. My current limit is 4 quirks at a time, but not use them simultaneously. I have to switch back and forth between each one. And each quirk lasts 10 minutes from after I touch the user." Izuku was scribbling almost frantically and caught attention as he did while Monoma kept going, letting his intake of breath act as a stop for Izuku to catch up. "I can't use quirks that store power effectively. And I can't copy mutations nor mutant quirks." I don't have anything else significant to say. Although his attitude was a little arrogant, the class could see he was somewhat caring and not as self-centered as they judged in first appearances, since he let Izuku write what he wanted to hear. Monoma sat down, and that meant up next was the jittering Izuku, gulping nervously as if he was trying to swallow his awkward nature. The brunette got up and was uncomfortable with all eyes on him. However, he tried to calm down as he caught up with his spinning thoughts and gave himself an internal pep talk. "Calm down, Izuku. They don't know you. You're not the same quirkless nerd anymore. Come on." Izuku clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he tried his best not to stutter. "I am Izuku am Midoriya," managing to get his name out. Izuku was interrupted with the sound of the door slamming open. "Damn it, Deku, so you're in 1B. Izuku's large emerald eyes stared wide at Bakugo, who was huffing a little, and the brunette froze. "Do you think you're better than me just because you got in Deku?" He stood straight up, standing imposingly as he raised his chin towards the ceiling to stare down Izuku from across the classroom. "Huh, even with a quirk you still are a stupid, weak nerd. You better thank your damned luck that you're not in my class. One is better than you losers," he shouted menacingly. Bakugo had found out through his mother, Mitsuki, that Izuku must have been a late bloomer with his quirk suddenly developing. Still, Bakugo didn't care because he believed Izuku to be a stepping stone to his path as a hero. What upset him was that this stone refused to be stepped on. If it weren't for a surprise physical exam by his homeroom teacher, he would have arrived earlier to confront Izuku. "At least my teacher is weeding out the weak by expelling some grape look-alike. This class is so lame if they keep you here," Bakugo scoffed. But before he could throw more insults, 2 students suddenly came forward. "Huh, what's this? If you're considered strong in Class 1A, then that class must be filled with angry children. Who's giving you the right to insult someone in my class?" Monoma had a condescending and almost crazed look in his eyes as he spoke, and Takage was trying to break this argument up after she made sure Izuku was okay. Bakugo did not take the backtalk from Monoma well as he took up a battle stance. He clenched his teeth and felt livid, knuckles clicking. Bakugo's palms were open and ready to explode as he and Monoma's glaring competition was about to become a full-out brawl when, bam, sorry about that. The class turned to see a girl with a ginger ponytail tied up high and an apologetic expression on her face as she sighed. "It hasn't even been half an hour since school started and I'm already a babysitter." She gave a friendly smile as she introduced herself as Kendo before picking up the unconscious Bakugo and dragged him away. Izuku was stunned. Never in his life had he seen anyone backtalk to Bakugo like Monoma, or had he seen anyone go as far as knocking the blonde out. It was also the first time someone had asked if he was alright. He snapped out of it, however, as he turned to Monoma and Takage and bowed repeatedly. "Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. You didn't have to do that." Takage chuckled before tapping Izuku's shoulder, and the freckled boy stopped bowing and stood up. "I didn't do that for you, Midoriya." Monoma sighed, his periwinkle purple eyes slanting as he spoke. "He insulted the class and I'm in this class. He insulted me. Plus he was calling my judgment bad because I've decided you would be useful for information gathering." Izuku quickly nodded, noting that Monoma's quirk would be more effective if he had a more extensive wealth of information. "Although now I have a few questions." Monoma gave Izuku a look, tilting his head as he did when he asked, "What did that one a trash mean by even with a quirk? And who's Deku?" Takage asked. Her large eyes were curious. Izuku's calloused hands waved around the air before wrapping around his face as he felt overwhelmed. Taking a deep breath, he tried his best to follow what All Might told him to say as he messily fibbed his way out. I was a super late BBL bloomer and everyone thought I was quirkless for a bit," and his voice trailed off as he turned to Takage for her question. Deku, that's insult. You know, Kakano. I mean, his name is Katsuki. Bakugo calls me that as an insult. Izuku awkwardly scratched the back of his head as Takage gave him a smile filled with confidence. Well, as a hero, we learn from the pain, right? Izuku looked at her and she kept grinning. We have to make do with what we have. I mean, look at my quirk. Takage's hand popped off her wrist and it floated around the air for a bit, bobbing up and down before reconnecting to her body. Not exactly strong, but when it comes to stealth and information gathering, I'd call myself top-notch. I do what I can and I'm sure you can do it too. Though, a wide smile graced her lips as she had an idea. That sounds a little like Deku. You can do it. Her overconfidence made Izuku smile as he never saw the nickname associated with negative thoughts that way. An awkward grin rising on his lips as Takage's smile was contagious. You're right, Deku, it is. That easy? Huase asked. And Izuku shrugged. A laugh filled with embarrassment bubbled up as he covered his face with his arms. All right, kids, out your seats. Vlad had returned to take them to orientation, and as they listened to their welcome speech, Izuku could feel Bakugo's death glare piercing through him. The one thing he did notice though was how Wano was down to 19 students and wondered if Vlad would do the same. But from his homeroom teacher's mutter, he figured he would be safe for now. The rest of the day consisted of getting to know a few others in the class, and by lunchtime, the students were heading to lunch in their newly formed friendship groups. As Monoma said, he had taken a liking to Izuku's notebooks. The unlikely pair formed a friendship filled with extensive, detailed conversations as they sat opposite each other in the canteen, with Izuku's muttering and Monoma's twisted expressions. Not many of the other students wanted to approach them, but Huase had just taken a liking to Izuku beforehand. He sat down with his lunch as he listened to the chattering pair talking up a storm. Stupid Deku, KK Kaken. Izuku quickly snapped out of it and sat up from his notebook to see Bakugo restrained by a redhead with shark teeth similar to Takage. However, the lizard girl's teeth were more rounded than this newcomer's. Small explosions were crackling from Bakugo's palms as he blasted the person holding him with no real effect, and Izuku noted how the shark boy's skin had gone rigid. Monoma was about to start trash talking again when Tsuburaba walked by the Wana students, his chest slowly heaving, and Izuku didn't understand until suddenly Bakugo was silent. What did you do? Takage asked, suddenly appearing out of nowhere, causing Izuku to panic a little as he was just thinking about her. She smiled at him again, and Izuku found that he really did like that toothy smile. Huh? Oh, my quirk, solid air. If I make a cage, it's soundproof. Bakugo was just getting more riled up as he still hadn't realized they could no longer hear him and thought he was being ignored. Takage went to sit on Izuku's left side as Huase was on his right. Monoma was still opposite, and Tsuburaba sat next to him. Bakugo finally punched his way out of the redhead's grip when he aimed an explosion, only for it to hit the solid air wall. The redhead managed to grab his arms again as no one could hear Bakugo's struggle against his classmate. Two others from Wana were laughing as the students of 1B were going to keep eating when Monoma stood up. Monoma? Izuku asked questioningly, but he was eyeing Bakugo. The purple-eyed blonde stood right in front of the air wall so that he could see Bakugo's struggle in vain up close. Awa, what's wrong? Is this too humiliating for Wana trash like yourself? Hey, that's mean. Monoma tilted his head to face one of the students laughing earlier, and it was a girl with pink skin and black eyes. I know he's mean, but he's not bad. Izuku looked a little uncomfortable with the situation as Monoma started arguing with the pink girl. But before anything else could happen, Kendo walked by alongside a girl with black hair swept into a ponytail too when she saw the commotion. Setting her tray down, she briskly walked over and greeted them. Want me to knock them both out? Tsuburaba nodded, but before he let go of his air cage, Bakugo let an enraged battle cry tear through the canteen as he tore out of the shark boy's grip and broke the air wall. He ran for Monoma, who was also ready to fight, but by the time the teachers were there, Kendo was getting ready to drag the unconscious Bakugo away as Izuku looked at the unconscious Monoma. Apart from Izuku carrying Monoma to rest in the nurse's office after the ordeal with Bakugo, the first day was relatively peaceful. The next day, the morning was just like any other school, with lessons such as English but with present Mike. It was all normal until it was time for hero class with All Might. For your first hero lesson, we're doing hero simulations, All Might announced before getting a box. What's that for? Takage asked curiously, and All Might explained the rules in pairs. I'm in Team A. Izuku muttered to himself as a floating cylinder of arm bounced into his line of sight. Yuwa. He stepped backwards, only to shiver as a floating hand slapped his back and Deku turned to face the smiling Takage. Deku, I'm Team A too, she said before eyeing Izuku up and down. That doesn't look like a UA-made costume. Izuku nodded before confirming his mother had made the costume. A floating hand grabbed the bunny ear-like fabric and Izuku wanted to compliment Takage back. However, all he could do was blush and look away as Take's scaled costume was green as their hair and skin tight. He pulled his mask over his face to hide the embarrassment blushing in his pink cheeks. But the other just smiled. It's more flexible this way. Her overconfidence was overwhelming as always, and Izuku nodded, letting her take the lead as they waited to find out who they were up against. For our first battle, we'll have Team A versus Team D. They turned to face Team D, and Izuku stopped panicking before lighting up as he saw it was Monoma and Shizaki. Although Izuku didn't want to fight Monoma as he was the first person to stand up to Bakugo for him, he couldn't help but grin as he mentally prepared himself to fight. Team D was the villains as they had a 5-minute head start, and Izuku was strategizing with Take. I can track the bomb. She smiled as her body started to split into smaller and smaller pieces. Izuku nodded before explaining that he had no control over his quirk yet had thought of a plan to compensate instead. Okay, so we don't know the range of Shizaki's quirk, but she says she can control the vines in her hair. Izuku started as he tried to find the way with the highest chance of winning. Monoma was standing with everyone earlier, so he would have 5 minutes left with a max of 4 quirks by the time we get to start. Then he's going to be mostly shut down. How? And why mostly? Because he wouldn't use an unknown quirk. And we both should know as much as each other because we worked together yesterday. And mostly because there's no denying he's the better strategist and he should have a backup idea. So here's the plan. Meanwhile, Monoma wasn't having an easy time with Shizaki as his teammate refused to even look at him and she started to stroll up the stairs. Shizaki, where are we going? Monoma asked, trying his best to stay polite because Shizaki was someone he knew would prove useful in the future. Do not talk to me, sinner. I am only doing what heaven wishes for. They were heading higher and higher as Monoma was losing his patience. He already struggled with cooperating in the first place, and he knew that against Izuku, if it weren't a battle of strategy, he would be at a disadvantage. After all, he would be out of commission in a few minutes. And even if Izuku couldn't control his power yet, he was still physically stronger. That meant to have a fair shot at winning, it had to be a battle of brains. Listen to me. He tried reasoning, but Shizaki's indifference was pushing Monoma off the edge. I will not hear the tainted whispers of a sinner. Back with Izuku. I want you to split into as many pieces as you can and spread out throughout the building. Take was already splitting as Izuku's mind spun. We saw that Shizaki was uncooperative during introductions yesterday. Monoma is likely not to think clearly and leave. You go up from the outside and guide me through the building towards the bomb. I need to avoid Monoma until his time runs out. Shouldn't I head to the bomb with you? Take asked. Izuku quickly shook his head. No, usually splitting up would be a bad idea, but we need information on Shizaki. We need more information on her quirk. Plus, if we both meet Monoma, then there's a chance he can put us in a stalemate. He might be weak in power, but he's also one of the smartest people I've ever met. Take nodded and their 5-minute waiting time was over. For a plain-looking dude, you're hella smart. Take smiled. The name Deku suits you. I feel like I really can do it. It would make a great hero name. Izuku blushed a little as she gave one more overconfident smile. Plus, I think it sounds kinda cute. There was no time to be flustered as Take's eyes narrowed to focus, and Izuku took a deep breath to hide the blush as they headed into the building, running with Take's lead. Just as they predicted, Take relayed information of how Monoma had snapped against Shizaki and had stormed out alone. Wait, no. When did? A panicked voice came down the earpiece and Izuku freaked out too. What's wrong? Izuku had just reached the 4th floor after Take confirmed the bomb was on the 5th as the lizard girl yelped. Deku, he's got my quirk. He knows where you are. He's collecting himself and coming over now. Shizaki has wrapped the bomb in vines and I don't see her. Izuku took in the situation and sighed, forcing himself to smile in the tense situation. Roger. I'll face Monoma and you go find Shizaki. If her vines can wrap the bomb, it means she has more energy to spare. Don't approach the bomb. Check the roof. She said something about sunlight yesterday. Understood. Izuku then made a run for the 5th floor as he knew Monoma would approach him either way. The blonde didn't have enough raw power with Take's quirk to beat him at the moment, so a confrontation with a different quirk would be the best bet. By the time he reached the bottom of the stairs to the 5th floor, he had heard a voice that made his head whip around instinctively. Behind you, whisking around to punch whoever should be behind him. Izuku was met with Monoma's floating head, and it was too late to dodge the incoming flying fist, ready to slam into Izuku's unprotected face. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We The Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video, as well as the editor for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord in the description of this video. and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out mortals. Have a fantastic day.